Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where we recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano. It's the 7th of July, 2023. Right, everyone, let's get into it. So, some worrying news out of Binance today. So, apparently, a bunch of Binance senior executives have quit over CZ's response to the Department of Justice investigation. So, senior figures such as the Binance's general counsel, chief strategy officer, and their senior vice president for compliance told Zhao from the block this week that they are leaving the company. Now, these aren't just your run-of-the-mill employees leaving Binance, right? Like these are positions, executive positions. These are people in real power within the company, and they have left the company because of CZ's response to the Department of Justice investigation. Now, obviously, there's a lot of speculation around this. There's a lot of people thinking, well, if these people are leaving, especially the SVP of compliance, what do they know, right? Do they know that Binance is in a lot of shit because they've been shady for quite a while now, and I've said that on the refill plenty of times before, that I believe Binance has been shady for quite a while. They did try to clean up their act, I think, over the last maybe couple of years, but the problem is that they played cowboy for so long, and then they tried to clean up their act because I thought they felt like it was catching up to them. And I think I remember saying this on the refill that I felt like CZ felt like it was all catching up to him, so he needed to play ball, he needed to come into compliance, stuff like that. But just because you do that doesn't wash away the sins of the past, right? And it depends on the regulator, and depends on what they want to go after. And as I said before, Binance is not a US-based company, so I'm not sure how much damage, I guess the word you could use is, or how much, I guess, like justice, if you want to call it that, the US could extract over Binance Global. Binance US is a different story, right? As I've said before, I think Binance US, its fate is probably shutting down eventually. But Binance Global, yeah, I feel like CZ is going to fight that tooth and nail. I feel like he's not going to obviously let his baby die. But I'm curious to see how much influence the US can have over that, because obviously the US doesn't have direct jurisdiction over Binance Global, but they could work with other regulators around the world to stifle Binance, from many different angles, and basically just cripple the Binance business instead of shutting it down altogether. And that's effectively just as bad as shutting it down by crippling it. Killing banking partners, making it so they can't operate in certain countries. And we've seen that play out, actually. Binance has not been able to maintain operations in a few European countries. In Australia, actually, the regulators or one of the enforcement agencies raided Binance Australia's offices. I think I read a post on over there, the derivatives products. So the crackdown is pretty global on Binance generally. But in terms of shutting them down, yeah, it'll be hard to shut them down. But in terms of choking them out and kind of like making it so that they're crippled, yeah, I feel like that's basically what's happening. And for better or worse, it's happening. Now, my kind of take on this is that if you still have funds on Binance, I would suggest moving them off Binance. I always suggest don't leave funds on centralized exchanges, unless, I guess, like you're a day trader and you want to take on the risk of leaving them there and kind of day trading on there. I guess from that lens, it's fine. But at the same time, like, there's been so many blowups of these centralized exchanges and services over the years that I don't know how anyone could feel comfortable keeping any substantial amount, let alone, I guess like any small amount of funds, let alone a substantial amount of funds on a centralized exchange, especially one like Binance. And not every centralized exchange is created equal, obviously, right? Like leaving it on Coinbase is not the same, or leaving your funds on Coinbase is not the same as leaving your funds on Binance. But generally, we have the power to self-custody. So if you are able to do that, if you trust yourself enough to do that, then you should be doing that. You shouldn't be leaving funds on centralized exchanges, because that risk is pretty high. And I think the risk went up for Binance over the past few months, especially. Not to say that I think that anything is necessarily going to happen to your funds, that your funds are going to get stolen, or Binance is going to shut down and run away with the funds. I'm not saying that I think that's going to happen, but generally, the risk is non-zero, and it's gone up over the last few months. So I just a friendly reminder to anyone who has substantial amounts of funds on Binance, especially, probably not a good idea to leave them there. Even if you're an active trader, maybe try another exchange or something like that. But I get it. The other exchanges, and it depends on your size too. Obviously, if you're a small trader, you can probably get away with DeFi. But if you're a large trader and you're a whale, DeFi may not offer you what the tools and the liquidity that you need to do those trades. But I think that's a minority group. I don't think that's the That's the majority in terms of people. Maybe in terms of volumes and liquidity, it can be the majority, but not in terms of actual kind of people, actual number of people there. But yeah, choosing another centralized exchange would be pretty hard. I mean, the only ones that I trust, the ones that I've used for a while, and I trust them only to the point of being able to get me in and out of crypto. So for example, I've told you guys before, I use a Australian-based crypto exchange. I've used them since 2013 called CoinJar. I've never really had any issues with them. I think the biggest issue I had with them was they reset my account limits because I had to apply for a different account for my retirement fund. So I had to spin up a new CoinJar account for my retirement fund. So I couldn't share it with my personal account. But then my personal account is tied to that account because I'm personally in control of my retirement fund, right? So they reset my limit there, and I just had to apply for increased limits again. And that's that's the most inconvenience I've ever been with them. Everything else has gone smoothly. Depositing is instant through my bank to the exchange. Withdrawing is also instant. So I recommend them for anyone in Australia. And I think they operate outside of Australia too. And as I said, I haven't had any issues there. But, you know, Coinbase and Kraken as well. I use Kraken quite regularly. I haven't really used Coinbase in the past too much, but Kraken definitely. But outside of that, I mean, it's hard, right? It's hard to find something that can be reliable and relatively trustworthy because there's just been so many shitty exchanges over the years. And, you know, so many people thought FTX was legitimate, right? And so many people trusted FTX with their money, and look what happened. And I'm not saying that everything is like FTX, but, you know, and I'm not saying that Binance is like FTX, but I think that it speaks to the fact that people will trust certain things that turn out to be complete frauds sometimes. So yeah, just a general kind of PSA there for people to get your funds off centralized exchanges generally, and especially Binance, and just self-custody if you're able to. But if you're not able to do that and you're not comfortable doing that, then you just need to accept the risk that your funds are not in your control when they're on these exchanges. They're in the control of the exchange themselves because they hold the private keys to both the hot and cold wallets. So technically, the funds aren't yours, right? Yeah, I mean, legally, they are yours. And that's a kind of funny term as well, because legally is also a funny thing because if the exchange was to go bankrupt, then it's a mess, right? I'm not even going to go through it all because I'm not an expert on this. But when I say legally, the funds are yours, I guess like if the exchange is still operating and they withhold your funds, you could go through the legal system to get access to those funds back, even though it probably would take a while to do that. So to avoid that mess, to avoid losing funds, just don't custody your funds on centralized exchanges. Learn how to self-custody if you don't know how to. It's not actually hard to do, guys. And the risk of you know, your seed phrase being compromised, or your hardware wallet being compromised or something like that, is pretty low. I would say that it's low for most people, as long as you follow just the standard practices. You know, don't put your seed phrase on a computer. Write it down on a piece of paper or something. I guess probably something more indestructible than a piece of paper, right? Or something better than a piece of paper. But you know, just have it stored somewhere. You know, maybe at your house or someone you trust's house or something like that, or in a bank safety deposit box or anything. Unless you're like a big name or someone well known within crypto, you're not going to be personally targeted over these sorts of things. So in my mind, that's safer than keeping your funds on a centralized exchange by far. And you know you've always got custody over them there. But anyway, enough about that. You can read the full details about this on the Fortune article, which I'll link in the YouTube description below. All right, so Terence has shared his slides from ETH Barcelona on enshrining PBS using a minimal approach. He says here, I covered why we need to enshrine soon and discussed the latest Mike Nuda and Francesco post on the payload timeliness committee with high-level changes. Feedback welcome. So yeah, if you've been following along with this, with enshrined PBS or ePBS, and I've been mentioning this a bunch of times on the Refuel, you can go check out these slides. Basically gives you a rundown of what it is, how the core developers and researchers are thinking about it, how it can be implemented on the network, with a bunch of, I guess, like slides here, as well as information attached to it too. So yeah, I'll link this in the YouTube description below for you to check out. But what I wanted to quickly focus on was just Terence's language here, where he says, I covered why we need to enshrine soon, right? So I think the reason why he's using this language and the reason why it's become a more pressing issue is because if you're a researcher, right, and if you're deep in the weeds of things like MEV and censorship resistance and stuff like that, you not only see what is true today, but you see what is true in the future just based on the incentives that exist today. And this is why something like MEV Boost actually came to be, because the original team behind MEV Boost, or I guess like the current team still that are building it, is Flashbots. But the original founders of that, one of them called, his name Phil Diane, who you may have seen on Twitter, wrote this post, or this research post called Flashbots, or Flashboys, I should say, 2.0. Now, Flashboys 1.0, or the original Flash Boys, was a research post put out quite a while ago, I think, for TradFi and for like front running and similar kind of, I guess, like MEV in TradFi, and that was based on latency games that different TradFi players were playing, where basically they would have their, I guess, their office situated as close to the exchange as possible in order to get better latency, right? And then obviously we have MEV in Ethereum and other expressive blockchains, or just blockchains generally, and then Phil Diane and a few others got together and wrote that Flash Boys 2.0 post, research post, and then created Flashbots with MEV Boost to alleviate a lot of these issues. But MEV Boost isn't enough for reasons I've outlined a lot of times in the past. It definitely is nowhere near enough, actually. It requires a lot of trust assumptions. It's a centralization vector. It basically lends itself to censorship in some cases, as we've seen play out with the OFAC sanctions. So how do we alleviate a lot of these issues? Well, we basically enshrine MEV Boost in the core protocol, and we call it PBS here, which is Proposer Builder Separation. And that way, it's not a silver bullet, but it's a lot better than what we currently have. And the sooner we get that in, the better. Because if we wait, years and years and years, the problem of MEV just gets worse. We end up suffering from things like multi-block MEV, and that becomes more prevalent, and then it's a blocker for things like single slot finality and stuff like that. So yeah, getting it in sooner rather than later is the way to go here. But yeah, you can check out these slides, and there's also a post here. I just saw it suggested by Twitter from Mike Nutter, which was, I guess, like related to Terrence's slides here. So you can check that out as well. It's all about ePBS. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, something interesting that I came across before that I thought was just hilarious. So the Arbitrum DAO has voted in favor of AIP-1.1. Now, this may ring a bell to you because this AIP was basically the spiritual successor to the original AIP that was handling that 700 million ARB tokens that were distributed to the Arbitrum Foundation. Now, have you seen anyone talking about this AIP? I haven't. I didn't even see it come up on my Twitter feed. I saw this randomly. I was going through. I was going through just Twitter, and it came up on my like suggested tweets. That's the only place that I saw it. I didn't see anyone talking about it on Twitter. I didn't see anyone praising Arbitrum for this and praising the Arbitrum community for this, and anything like that, or talking about it, which was hilarious to me because the original AIP that everyone was talking about just blew up, right? Like it was literally everywhere on Twitter, and Arbitrum was copying so much flack for this. Whereas this proposal, which is actually a really good proposal, and the DAO voted in favor of it, and it puts the treasury in a vesting contract for over 4 years. This got no airtime. So it just speaks to the fact that drama and like, I guess, engagement bait just spreads so much further than the truth and the stuff that may seem less exciting, but is actually much more important. And this isn't just the case for something like the this AIP, it's the case for everything. I came across a tweet yesterday or today when I woke up. It was from my friend Liam. He put out a tweet saying something about the ETH supply and showed the chart from Ultrasound Money, which showed the ETH supply in deflation because of the burn, and then it also has a line showing the BTC supply or the BTC issuance rate going up. And then I was reading through all the comments from like these BTC maxis, right? And they're all obviously coping over this and saying all this other crap about it, and they were getting like tons of likes. And it was funny because there was one guy, and actually I could probably bring it up here just for the sake of an example here. I replied to this guy because I just thought it was so stupid. Let me just here. So this one guy, he quote tweeted Liam, and you can see the chart that I'm talking about on my screen. He quote tweeted Liam, and he said, "Demand for ETH has fallen off a cliff despite their efforts to manipulate the short-term supply, and they're spinning it as bullish." What is he even talking about here? Right? How could demand for ETH fall off a cliff if the only reason why ETH is deflationary is because of demand, because you need fee demand to burn ETH? Like, it doesn't make any sense, right? And this is obvious to anyone who pays any sorts of attention here. But this was from one of the laser-eyed Bitcoin maxi morons. We all know those types. Look at the engagement. 327 likes, 24 retweets, 5 bookmarks. I don't know who's bookmarking this, right? It was great to see Anti-Prosynthesis reply saying, do you even understand what that graph is saying? And he ratioed this guy. But still, like, this is engagement, lots of engagement on a post that is literally completely wrong. There is no debate here. It is factually wrong. But the thing is that this appeals to Alan's followers, right, which are probably all Bitcoin maximalists. All they want to do is crap on Ethereum, right? All they want to do is insult Ethereum. Doesn't matter if it's true or not. So this is related to what I was saying before about how people have a bias towards different kind of news sources and different things. People will complain about one thing, and then when it's rectified in another way, they won't even pay attention to it. And that's what happened with the AIP here. And you see this play out pretty much everywhere on crypto Twitter, but beyond crypto Twitter as well. It is not exclusive to crypto, don't get me wrong there. But obviously being in crypto, we all see it a lot. And yeah, I just came across that tweet today from Liam and then Alan and just all the reply. It was just insane. Honestly, I've been putting up with this and reading this stuff for years now, since I've been on crypto Twitter, and it's always the same. They don't change their tune. It's like they're all reading from the same kind of propaganda handbook that basically says list of points to shit on Ethereum with. And basically, it doesn't tell you if they're true or not. It just says something that might sound true, or might not even sound true. It just sounds good to the maxi community, so that they can crap on Ethereum. But anyway, I'm gonna stop ranting there. But I just felt that was very relevant to this Arbitrum AIP stuff, because I didn't see anyone talking about this, and you probably haven't heard about this until I talked about it on the Refuel. I'm gonna assume that most of you have not heard about this until just then there. But if you want to see the full details of the AIP, you can. It's linked in this link here from Tally, which I'll link in the YouTube description below. But great to see that movement is being made here in the Arbitrum DAO community. So yeah, I'll keep tabs on that for you guys as well. All right, so Flashstake has introduced Flash 2.0, which is an expansion into the universe of time-traveling money. Basically, it is their 2.0 upgrade for their protocol. So they say here they've got new tokenomics, new architecture, new governance with the same vision. So there's a sneak peek into Flash 2.0 in this Twitter thread, which you can check out for yourself. Basically, the TLDR is in these tweets here, where they're showing what changes they're making to the tokenomics, the architecture, governance, and more. And for those of you who don't know what Flashstake is, it's basically a protocol that lets you get the yield up front, or 2 years worth of yield up front on things like staked ETH. So for example, you put you put your ETH in here, and you say, okay, well, I want to get the yield right now on this ETH, and then it gives it to you up front, instead of having to wait, right? Instantly and up front, instead of having to wait those 2 years there. And you can see that Flashstake has been growing quite steadily over time here, which is really cool to see. And yeah, they're coming out with their 2.0 protocol here, which basically does a lot for the tokenomics, the architecture, and overall governance. So you can go check this out. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, something interesting I came across that was tweeted out by Gelato today. So they say here, Ethereum addresses are more readable thanks to ENS, but keeping these .eth addresses requires regular renewals. With Wary.eth's self-repaying ENS service, or SRENs, that doesn't roll off the tongue at all, but SRENs, you could automate renewals using Alchemix and Gelato, and they explain how this works. So the SREN service has automated the process of ENS domain renewals, mitigating the risk of losing your unique .eth address. In this process, Alchemix is leveraged by users to create a self-repaying loans where they convert their ETH into yield-bearing AL ETH to cover renewal fees. Meanwhile, Gelato works behind the scenes to automate the renewal process and ensure that ENS domains are consistently updated, eliminating manual interventions and the fear of losing your unique .eth address. This is really cool because this is multiple protocols working together. As you can see here, this service leverages Alchemix, Curve, ENS, and Gelato to achieve this, and allows you to basically fully automate on-chain the, payment of, or the renewal of your ENS using the yields from from Alchemix. That just blows my mind there, the fact that that's all just like working together in such a nice and harmonious way to do something as really simple as renewing an ENS name. But they're right. I mean, there's a lot of people who probably will forget to renew their ENS name, and then someone will come along and swoop it. I mean, I wouldn't know what I'd do if someone was able to get Sassel.eth and then basically extort me or try and blackmail, not blackmail, but try and extort me into paying them for it, right? Imagine if someone got Sassel.eth and then said, hey, I'll give it back to you, but you need to pay me like 10 ETH or something like that. And the funny thing is that like I don't even know if I'd pay that or not, because the Sassel.eth address is very important to me. And I actually think I have it renewed to a very long date, like the year 2050 or something like that. Obviously, there's a cost involved there, but for me, it was just like peace of mind. I'm like, I'm just going to renew this for as long as I can, instead of relying on auto renewal. But it was expensive. It didn't come cheap. So for people who don't want to do that, and they obviously just want to maybe do it yearly or something like that, and they want to do it with funds that are being generated through another protocol like Alchemix, this is a way to do that. So you can go check this out for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. I just thought it was something cool to put on your radar. All right, Metamask has released a new version 10.33. They've said here, with a cleaner layout, more intuitive site connections, network and account selection, foxing with Web3 got easier. I do not like that foxing term. that is not good. I've never heard anyone say that they're foxing. Jeez, I actually can't. It's so funny. No one's ever said, like, I'm foxing the Ethereum chain. Like, even saying it out loud just sounds silly. But anyway, they went with that. And then they said here, your feedback inspired us to improve, enabling a simpler Web3 journey. And there is a related news post here. So essentially, you can see what they've got going on here. So the network selection has been moved to the left-hand side. So instead of in the middle where it says Ethereum mainnet, you've got a little logo showing the Ethereum mainnet on the left-hand side. Your account selection is up the top middle now. So you can see here that the different accounts are labeled different things like DeFi wallets. And then there's a connection status indicator on the right-hand side. They've flipped around the denomination. So when you're looking at your balance, it shows USD in bold and ETH in lowercase, in the lower, in the smaller font, I should say, and the dollar amounts in the bigger font. I wonder if you can change that around. Honestly, I preferred it the other way around, because when I'm looking at my address, I don't really care about the USD value. A lot of the time, I more care about the actual tokens I have in there. But I'm sure there's probably a setting for that. And they've added a new button here, a portfolio button, to link to their portfolio section of MetaMask. So just a few, I guess, like cosmetic changes here. Nothing major. And it's still not like user to me in my mind totally user friendly or anything like that. It's definitely not a wallet that I see having like ultra mainstream appeal, but that's okay. As I've said in the past, there's plenty of wallets targeting that. Rainbow Wallet on mobile, Coinbase Wallet, you have Frame on desktop, Rabby, there's a few other wallets out there. They're targeting those different markets, right? So I don't think MetaMask needs to necessarily go after those markets. They already have a huge user base. They already got such a huge network effect with people there, and people like using it if they're used to it. So, I mean, maybe like using it is the wrong term, but people use it if they're used to it. I mean, I'm not going to say that I love my MetaMask experience, but I use it because it's reliable. I've used it for a long time now. I feel it's secure because it's MetaMask, right? They've been around for quite a while now. And I just, I use it in connection with my hardware wallet, stuff like that. So it's all well and good in terms of security. But yeah, anyway, just wanted to highlight that for you guys that MetaMask is improving over time, but it is slow improvements. So if you see the change in your MetaMask wallet, this is why, because it actually is MetaMask pushing through this update over the last few days. All right, last up here was a tweet from Dan Romero, who you'll remember is one of the founders or the founder of Farcaster, which is a Twitter alternative. So he tweeted out saying, if you're looking for a new social network that's mostly people who are creating/building new stuff, optimistic and civil and interested in Ethereum, DM and I can send you an invite. So I've been sending invites to a fair few people on Farcaster before. But the problem with me sending out invites was that a lot of people that I sent invites to didn't become active users. And I mean, I'm not an active user of Farcaster either, but Because of that, I'm not going to be giving out invites like willy-nilly anymore, because you get less invites if you invite people that don't stick around. That's just how the invite system works right now. So I'm going to say I've got some invites left, but please only DM me if you plan to actually use Farcaster. I know that's rich coming from me, since I'm not very active on there. But I guess like for me, it's a bit different, where I have like such a huge following on Twitter and such a huge network on Twitter. It's kind of hard for me to switch off from that. But yeah, I've still got some invites left, and you can also DM Dan Romero here as well for an invite to Farcaster there. But also on the topic of this, I wanted to obviously mention the Threads app that was recently released by Meta, where essentially if you have an existing Instagram account, or you can sign up for a new one, you can access this Threads app. Honestly, like I created an account there just to secure my username, which is Sassel0x, obviously. But other than that, I'm not planning to switch over to Threads. As much as I think that Twitter has become a worse platform since Elon Musk took over, as much as I think that eventually Twitter is potentially going to file for kind of some kind of bankruptcy, because I don't see Twitter being profitable at all and it's just bleeding money, the network effect is still there, right? And I spent the last 5-6 years building up that network effect on Twitter, that the only thing that would encourage me to actually switch off Twitter to one of these other platforms would be if Twitter didn't exist anymore. Because then everyone would be forced to switch off, right? Like all my network on Twitter, at least the ones that cared, would switch to one of these other apps. They would switch to Farcaster or Threads, and then I'd be able to very quickly build up that network again on these different apps, and it would just be something that people kind of agreed upon. This is the new Twitter, this is what we're using, and then we go on from there. But while Twitter still exists, while Twitter still works, and I use the term works loosely, but it still works, right? While it still has a network effect, while it still has all the people on it, I'm just going to continue to use Twitter. If Twitter ceases to exist in the next year because they go bankrupt or something like that, which I mean, even if they go bankrupt, I feel like someone else will just come along and buy it, and because the network effect is so powerful, and the network is so valuable, that someone would come along and buy it. So I don't think Twitter is going to die. But yeah, for me personally, it's very hard to switch. The switching costs are extremely high. But if Twitter was to just disappear, then I would surely be obviously more motivated to switch to one of these other platforms here. But I think that Threads generally is either going to be a flop or only appeal to a niche kind of a crowd. And I feel like it's not going to win over the Twitter crowd, to be honest, because as I said, unless Twitter goes under, or unless Elon Musk screws the Twitter so badly that it just becomes unusable, like he did with the API change, which he seems to have walked back, and having to be logged in order to view tweets, those things have been walked back. But if they weren't walked back, I feel like a lot of people would have switched off, because you're just making the product unusable, and then people aren't going to stick around if something's unusable, right? I've talked about the kind of mostly centralized platforms so far. There are decentralized social media platforms like Lens Protocol, that I've talked about in the past as well, that I've been generally pretty bullish on, but they're still very early. I don't think they could handle the traffic of anything near Twitter just yet, but hopefully at some point in the future, maybe over the next few years, they get to a point where they're able to service an audience the size of Twitter, and then people can move there and people can do things there, and if it's fully integrated with crypto services, stuff like that, that would be a dream, honestly. Having all of crypto integrated natively into a social media app that I use, and potentially doing it in a privacy-preserving way as well, I think that would be really, really cool. But I think we're a whiles away from that. It's definitely not something that's going to happen anytime soon, but I think we can eventually get there. But yeah, as I said, you can DM Dan Romero for an invite, and you can DM me, but please only do so if you plan on actually actively using Farcaster, because I will just not get any more invites if I keep inviting people that aren't active on Farcaster, unfortunately. So yeah, anyway, that's going to be it for today's episode. So thank everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all next week. Thanks everyone.